All right, hi everyone. In this video, I'll be showing you a smarter way to send contracting quotes faster. I'm going to show you how to build a fully automated quote generator using Fillout, Airtable, Zapier, and your QuickBooks with no coding required. You'll learn how to streamline your sales process, auto-calculate pricing, and send professional quotes in seconds. So this is the perfect video for contractors, freelancers, and service businesses looking to save time or close more deals. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, to start, I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of what's going to happen. We're going to have a form created in Fillout. That form is then going to submit information into our Airtable file. It's going to submit it into line items. The line items are going to be used to create our invoice, and then that invoice will be connected to, excuse me, Zapier. Zapier will then send the invoice information to QuickBooks, and then QuickBooks will send an email out to the particular client that we're working with for them to go ahead and pay. So first things first, let's look at our Airtable. Now first here we've got our clients. Nothing really special about this. You've got client name, billing information, contact email. We're not going to use a lot of this today. This is going to be a really basic understanding so people can get out there quicker and go ahead and start generating quotes. So what's important to see here though is the invoices connected to clients. And so this means anytime that this client has used us before, we know what they've gotten in the past. And so that kind of helps us know as time goes on, who's a really valuable customer and who maybe our sales team should be reaching out to more. Because maybe some of these guys are commercial real estate moguls, and they have 100 apartment complexes or something, and maybe you want to make sure you reach out to them more often. So yeah, that's what this client table is for. Next, you have invoices here. Invoices will take all of our line items, create it into one invoice, and then it gets sent into Zapier, like I said earlier. So just really quick to walk through in case someone's trying to recreate this exactly to match me. First, I have the invoice number, and you can do this however you want, but in my case, I've set it up as invoice number and then an auto number, to the right of it, it's creating this information. Next, we have auto number. Again, I like to have this in here. I know I have this 1, 2, 3 here, but I've always liked to add another column here. And so for this example, I'm more so going to be imagining that we're working with a residential bathroom client. So I've gone ahead and listed the clients by their beginning addresses. So then we also have the client term days. Maybe you don't want to use this, and we're not going to use it in this example, but it's just more information to have if it's a larger project and there's more of a delay around what's going on. Now next we have our invoice date, and you can set this to whatever you want. I've set it to the create time. So this draft obviously has a wrong invoice date, but for what we're doing today, that's okay. Now we can set this later to be a modified thing where the invoice date is set based off of when the invoice status is finalized. And what that would mean is that the invoice has been sent, but we're not going to do that here today. So next we'll come over to our invoice status. Like I said earlier, finalized draft information. This just helps us sort of determine what's been sent, what hasn't been sent. If it's a draft, maybe it's a larger project, and maybe the technician wants a couple other sets of eyes on this project and the final quoted outcome. Now, we also have our total amount here. This will add up all of the line items that we'll see here in a sec. Now, this is the line items. This will be from the next table too, and it's really important that you have this in here actually, because if you don't have this connected, then your invoice isn't going to pull the correct services, or it's not going to pull the services at all, and then you won't be able to have a total amount. Now, notes here, this is going to come from the form. This can be an internal note, it can be an external note. In this case, it's used more as an internal, and it's a lot of just jargon if you look at it. So I'm not attaching the invoice from QuickBooks, but we could certainly do this. It's a great little feature to have rather than having to go back to QuickBooks and look at the invoice or look at the attachment. You just have it right here. Next, we'll go ahead and look at the trigger invoice, and this is just going to show anytime there's been a modification to the table. So let's say if I added like test here, this would take a moment, but it'll go ahead and make an update here. Now the next part here, this is a QBO invoice link, and what I'm doing here is after we create the QuickBook invoice, rather than having to go back into QuickBooks, look for that customer, and then find that particular invoice, I just want to go ahead and have a quick link that I can use here. Go ahead, we'll just check this one out. So this is a QuickBook invoice for $2,750. The person's able to use debit, credit, bank. This is all normal information that you can just see with QuickBooks. Now when I click our view invoice, this is where it gets really cool. So the information that we've added from the form, I had a toilet installation for this one, I had demolition, and I had a rough plumbing bath and waterproof membrane. And all of that was able to be added here, so that way the client knows exactly what they're paying for, itemized. So we're done with invoices. Moving to line items. The line item ID, this just pulls in the service name. So every line item starts with the service name. We're going to have the invoice number. This is just auto number. You can actually remove this. This isn't needed. So next part is the invoice reference. This is just making sure we're connected to the appropriate reference number. These are some old ones, so that's why we're seeing that they're not connected at the moment. So I can also just go ahead and remove these. So now that you see this, we have the invoice reference, and this is coming from the invoice table, like I just said. So that way it's really important that you have this information, or the sub form that we create for the fill out will not work for you. So just make sure you have that down. Next, we have the service reference. Again, this is just bringing over the service from the service table. And then I have a formula here because you can't have link tos as the primary field in any table. So link to services, and then formula linked to this service reference column. Next, we have the descriptions. This is a lookup field. It's a lookup field for every particular service that we need, as you can see here. Next, we've got the quantities, and this is the information submitted on the form, just so, this is going to be different every single time, so it's really important that you have this information. Next, we have the unit price, and again, this is coming from the service table. And then finally, we have the total price, and this is taking our quantity times our unit price, and this is just another formula. So once you have this information, then we'll go over here to services, and what's happening here is this is just a full list of the different services we're offering. And today we're working with a bathroom remodeling example, so everything here is bathroom remodeling. Okay, and then if I scroll over, we also want to make sure that the related line items are connected. So if you want different things that are going to connect with this particular service, demolition, it's going to be used with all of them. Toilet installation might be used with all of them. But waterproofing membrane is only used particularly with tile installation. Just all things to consider. And then over here we have our service names in QuickBook. Now this, actually you can just go ahead and delete this too. It's not needed. This was when I was first uploading the services into QuickBook. That would be a separate video from this, so I can just go ahead and delete that. So we have all of our information in Airtable. Now next I am going to go to the form, show you guys what the form looks like. So you can't create this form in Airtable. Airtable doesn't allow you to do linked forms within two tables. So for this particular thing that we're creating, this invoice or a quote generator, we need to be able to have line items created, and then those line items need to be connected to a new invoice that's created, and it has to happen at the same time. And that's not something that you can currently do in Airtable, so you do need some other software like Fillout. So for this example, I've gone ahead, I've added my company logo at the top, Roanoke Workflow Automation. We're going to go ahead and I'll just go ahead and preview this so we can walk through it together. Client scene, we're going to say, well, once it'll load, we're going to use Bob. Any special instructions we have, you could tell them we need it done quick, need it done next week. For this example, I'm not going to put anything in. Now, for this example, I want you to imagine that the technician has actually come to the person's home. They've determined what they need to get done. And so, they're already talking about it. He's going to create this in the application to show them, and just to show you what it looks like. If the technician came in on an iPad or on their phone, they can still create this quote from their phone, show it to the person, and give them a breakdown of every individual thing that they're going to be doing. So go ahead again, add Bob, and the services quoted. I'm going to use, let's see. Now let's see why that's not working. Services quoted, remove this, bring this back over, and let's see, we need to have our records. Can create new records, yes. Now we also don't want to show any previous records, so I'm only going to show the new records. Great, I have this. I'll come in, edit, record creation form, and let's see. Great, all right, so this works. So I'll publish this information in our subform. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to pull this above again. Now this subtotal might be wrong, so that's going to be the next thing that we fix. So I'll change this to services quoted, and then, services quoted. We'll go ahead and add. Let's say we're going to add demolition. Okay, great. And I'll just preview this. So what we're going to do here, and sorry, I did that in the actual hub, so it's not going to work off the rip. We finalized, our service is quoted. I'll come back over here again. I'm going to type in demolition. Now this is 1. Now you see that there's this change button, which means that I need to come back here and I need to be able to can select multiple. So now that I have that here, I'll come back. I will publish this information to make sure it's saved. I'm going to preview it again. So add another client, we'll do finalize again, and we'll do demolition. Perfect. So now we have demolition here, and I'm going to add another thing. So we're going to go ahead and we're also going to add toilet installation. And just one, we're just working with one bathroom today. And then the next thing, I'll come back and suddenly the client says, actually, I want to get some tiling on the floor done. So we're going to do tile installation. And this is per square feet. Or excuse me, we're going to do waterproofing. And so this is per square feet, it's $3.50. I don't have the appropriate title set here. But what we'll say is, let's say it's 50 square feet done in the shower. So we'll submit this too. And so now we have the toilet installation we're doing some demolition in there, and we're also adding some waterproofing membrane in their shower. So as you can see, this total still showing 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. This subtotal is connected to logic, and my logic calculations obviously broke because we deleted the past subform. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I am going to change this to, see, my services quoted, and then anytime the quantity is greater than 0 or it's not empty, so this would just mean like if anything's added to that form, any service is added to that form, it's going to make sure to add this in our total. And so this is just another nice to have when your technician is out and they can turn around and show their iPad or show their phone, give them a breakdown of the total price. We can also do stuff where we can add the exact price for every service offered, and the unit prices as well as the quantity. Today I'm not going to do that. I'm just giving you a basic overlay of how to do it. So we're going to go ahead, hit here, hit add. I'm going to come to services quoted and the total price, because that's going to give us quantity times the unit price associated. And we'll click done. Sweet. And then I'm just going to, just to be safe, come here. I'll do, just to show you what we're doing, hit at. Now this is a calculation in our logic. So I'm going to go ahead here, hit subtotals. All right, and now this should be appropriately set up. Now I'll come down here, client scene. We're going to do this time Dora. We'll do finalize, services getting quoted. We're going to add first we're demolishing something. Maybe they're adding a new bathroom today. So remove that. Next we'll do a toilet installation. Perfect. We'll add one of those. And they also want to, like I said before, just so we can show a unit breakdown, they also want some waterproof membrane for their shower. They've noticed that there's some water seeping out. And 50 square feet again. So we have our total breakdown here. We've got all the services offered. We have the invoice status as finalized, and that's because we know we're showing this information to the client now. They know what's going on, and we just want to get paid so we can start. So all of this is ready. We're going to go ahead and hit submit. Great. So this is done, and now I'm going to go back into Airtable and show you guys what that did. So if I come back here, I'm going to come to this filtered option, and this is really important that we have this filtered option in here. Going to give this a moment. Okay, great. Now, this is our only triggered invoice in here. And the reason it's in here is because we've set a filter on our other grid view here that the invoice status is finalized. So that means it's ready to be submitted. The client's ready to receive the invoice and go ahead and pay. And the QBO invoice, that's where we're putting the URL for our QuickBooks, is empty. And the reason it's empty is because it hasn't been created yet. And what we're going to see next is in Zapier, when our workflow is completed, the final step will be to add that URL back into Airtable. Otherwise, you're going to have a huge issue of an infinite loop issue. And that will really eat your Zapier tokens. It's happened to me before, and I don't want it to happen to you. So to do that, you'll take your grid view here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new grid. We'll call this your trigger invoice if you'd like. And we're going to go ahead and create this. Create new view. Awesome. And then just to show you guys exactly what I'm doing, I'm going to add the new conditions where QBO invoice is empty. Okay. And then another and where, let's see, the invoice status is finalized. Perfect. Now this is blank right now, and that's because we have the Zapier workflow running in the background, and it's gone ahead and submitted that QuickBook or that invoice for us. So I'm going to show you where that's going on, and just to show you again, just so you understand what happened, it created the link here. It's already created our invoice in QuickBook. It's already sent it to my email. It's the exact information we were talking about. It's $1,900. If I view the invoice, it's the same breakdown of information. So waterproofing, toilet installation, there's our descriptions, our total quantities. So perfect. That's exactly what we need for a client, and we can get started as soon as they pay. So now that we have that information out of the way, I'm going to come over to Zapier, and I'm going to show you guys what the workflow looks like that's actually running this. So first off, let's come here. So first off, this is the quote trigger we were talking about, and this is working off of anytime anything comes in here, it knows that it needs to create that invoice. So what's happening is table is invoices. The last modified time column is the triggered invoice. And what the trigger invoice is doing is this is playing off of this trigger. So if there's an update made here, then our information knows to update this trigger invoice column. And when it does that, it knows that it needs to make an update on the Zapier side too and submit a new QuickBook invoice. So we have this information. Next, we'll have find all the line items associated with the invoice. And I'm going to scroll down here just so you guys can get all this information. So the search value is the invoice number. Max records, I have it 10, but you can have it higher. For this example, we're not having more than 10 services offered within each quote. So It's whatever you feel is necessary for that. Next, I'm going to go ahead and gather the find client's name. Now, you don't necessarily need this. If this was a more advanced example, you would certainly want to have it, and I've added it just in case if we wanted to add more in the future to this. So the search value is, again, the invoice number, and that's what we're pulling from this first finalized quote trigger. All right. And then next, this is when we start to get into QuickBooks. Now, we're going to want to have our QuickBooks connected to our Zapier. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the record field line items to actually find the QuickBooks information. And I'm going to show you guys what I mean by that. So what is happening here is we have our find products. So whenever we're adding the services that you saw on this page, where we have, toilet installation, we can't just directly add that information from Airtable. It doesn't work that well. You're going to end up with like the default value of services or something appearing here rather than the actual information you need. So you need to make sure that you go into QuickBooks and that you add all of your appropriate services, any descriptions that you want, and the unit price. Now you can create another workflow that does that. In this video, I'm not going to go over that, but that's something I can do in the future. So we'll come here, we're configuring with the record fields. And if you remember the record fields, it's coming from step 2, which is the find all line items. And so if I come here, what that means is it's taking like the line item ID from here, and it's just looking up the exact service name, and it's comparing it to what we find in QuickBooks. And so whenever there's a match, it knows, okay, a product was found here. So for this example, the name of the information passed from find all the line items was demolition. And so we'll go ahead and do a test here. And perfect. Yeah, I found it. The product name, demolition. It's got the product information. If I scroll down, see unit price is connected. We know what type it is. It's a service. So perfect. We've got all the information that we needed, and it's going to do this for every service offering or every part of that quote. Now next, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate customer, and so that way this information can be submitted to their email, or some clients maybe need to mail it to them. So if we're going to find customer here, configuring, I've got name called, got this information. Now this is where the QBO client number comes into effect, and QBO is just the QuickBook client number. So all of these I have them set to 27, and that's a sample client that I have. So all of them are just being triggered to that guy. But you can update this, and you can have this connected to your QuickBooks. So in the future, okay, maybe you have 100 different clients and 100 different QBO client numbers connected. So that's what this information is. And so what this will do is it's going to find our test client. All right, perfect, that's me. And then what it's going to do next, it's going to start creating the invoice. Now the invoice is a little tricky, and I'm not going to add all of the particulars in here. Again, this is a basic rundown of how to do it. If you guys have any questions, certainly put it in the comment section and I can run through those with you guys. So first off, we're going to have the customer ID number. Now there's a QBO client number, and then the ID number is different. The ID number comes from QuickBooks. So in this case, I'm taking this from the last step. This is the connected invoice ID. I'm just using my company email here, but what you could do instead is if you wanted to connect the appropriate client email, I could do dash, come down here. Maybe I want to find primary email address, so we could use this one instead. But I'm going to keep it as mine. Great. Oops. All right. Now we'll scroll down, and you can add the billing address here. I'm taking this from the client information from step 3. And just to show you what's going on, you're going to hit your slash here, come down, and then I can add the address. So fields billing address. Perfect. All right. I'm not going to add the invoice date, shipping date, invoice number. I'm going to have that auto-generated. Service date, I'm not going to worry about that for this video. The product and service ID. Now these are the IDs connected to the services. So 4 I think is demolition, 6 is like rough installation. And what you're seeing here is this is an example too. This isn't the same form example that we created. It's a test slip that's sitting in Zapier. So we've got all our information needed. Perfect. We've got our products, we've got our amount set, and this is the total price per service per times the quantities. Great. So we've got all this. And then the next part is we're going to send the invoice. And how we do that is, all the setup needs to be done, and then configure the invoice ID number. And so this is different from the invoice number from Airtable. Now we need to use the appropriate one from QuickBooks when we're creating this, or it won't know what to do. And again, I'm using my company email for this part. All right, and then finally we're going to have the update record. And it's really important that you add this. Do not forget to do this, or you're totally going to burn all of your monthly tokens on Zapier. I've been there before and it sucks. So you come into here. I'm using this base for my Airtable. This is the appropriate. Now remember this step. You need this record ID from the first invoice. This record ID is going to come from our finalized quote trigger that we talked about before. Perfect. And then scroll down and QBO invoice. We're going to modify this. And by modifying this column, the modified column on the trigger invoice, and that's what we talked about earlier, this trigger invoice will update. And when that updates and when we have it finalized, that removes it from this grid view, which means that it's not going to continue to recreate that invoice. So let's see. Perfect. And so this is everything you need to know in terms of the workflow for Zapier. Everything here's set up. We've gone through Airtable. We've gone through your form fill out. And here's an example of what it looks like in QuickBooks. Now, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this, what you guys would want to see added to it. I think there's a ton that we can add to it, but again, this is just a basic rundown of what it looks like. And if you have ideas for other videos or other things you'd like to see, please reach out, and I'd love to hear it. And also, please subscribe and like. I'm new to YouTube, and so getting some likes would be great. And all right, thank you. Have a good one.